Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman. I'm the senior editor at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and it's time for another Steelers preview back on our regular night of Thursday. Thankful for that, and joining me as always thankful for Bryan Davis and Dave Schofield, who are with me on this flight. Bryan, what's going on?
Hey, it's our Steeler family, all our Steeler family. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to this every single Thursday. Last week, we did it on a Tuesday. It was still special.
Oh, that's nice. Dave, welcome to the show. What's going on with you?
Not much. It was special. Brian's right, but that's not the way it's made to be played. Football's made to be played at 1 o'clock on Sundays. But I'm ready to get back to that. It's exciting to get back to a normal week, try to get everything going. And I like moving on to the next game. Time to move on.
I want to make a general statement here. We'll call it a blanket statement that this is a no judgment zone here for the Steelers fan base. If you want to hate the Steelers, hate the Steelers. If you want to hate the coach, hate the players, I don't care. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions. If you're watching live on YouTube or on Facebook, you can feel free to fire away at whatever you want and understand that, hey, we're all... Yeah, but I
like how you use the word fire, and that's the one word I'm trying to avoid because it's just like,
No, but still, like, hey, we had Snoop a Loop gave us the super chats a couple weeks ago saying fire Tomlin in the postgame show. If that's what they think, that's fine. They're entitled to their opinion. We may not agree, but hey, this is one spot where I'm not going to be a gatekeeper for any fan base. All are welcome. So keep that in mind. Other than that, I'm just really excited for this football game. I'm excited to watch the Steelers again. It feels like forever. That's the one thing I also hate about Thursday Night Football is if your favorite team doesn't win, you find yourself waiting seemingly forever to get that taste out of your mouth. So, all right, Philip, my boy Philip, he gives us $1.99. He said, my God, these white Bengals uniforms make me sick. I have not seen them. I can only imagine how putrid they are.
I'm watching it right now.
Is it as bad as he says it is?
I feel like I'm watching a black and white TV.
Oh.
That's what it honestly feels like. Well, you guys, Brian's probably old enough. Jeff might not have ever had a black and white TV. I had a black and white TV growing up. We had one color TV, and we had this little portable that we could hook into the antenna if we wanted to do everything right, to where we had another little black and white TV. So I was used to watching that some. That's just what it feels like. Sometimes it's like the old timey game.
I did not have a black and white TV. My grandmother did. And so when I went to her house, if I went in the back bedroom, I had to watch a black and white TV. So I'm familiar. So, all right, let's start with the news. It's been forever. There hasn't been a ton of news outside of the injury report, which we'll get to that in a second. I want to get your all's thoughts on something here, and it has to do with the Jets. You know, the New York Jets have had Joe Flacco, old Joey, as the quarterback of their team the last 3 weeks. He was a 1-2 as a starter. He is not starting this week. Zach Wilson, who I always want to call Zach Morris for some reason, he is going to be the starting quarterback for the Jets. When it was in limbo, they weren't sure who was going to start. Who did you want to start, Bryan?
Zach Wilson. And here's the reason. This is Zach Wilson's war this week, but he's coming up off the shelf. The last time he played was August 9th in a preseason game. And he has not seen game action. He's never seen the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I kind of thought Joe Flacco was in a little bit of a renaissance, and he's always been dangerous against the Steelers. Everyone says that they want Flacco, but no, I really think that he throws well, and he brought that team back against the Browns. So I'd rather take a nervous rookie. I mean, even though he's not a rookie, he's a second-year man, but he's coming back in, and in Pittsburgh against a wounded, angry team. Yeah, I don't like his chances. I think he's got a better chance at an over 40s bar.
What about you? Nice. That's number one.
We'll
see how many jokes we get.
How many times he goes there?
Zach Wilson's off the field antics. We'll just put it that way. That's number one. So Dave, what about you? When it came to the quarterback for the Jets, were you pulling for one or the other?
I was honestly, it's tough because you might think that one's better, but really when it comes down to it, especially the way Flacco's been playing, I was pulling for Zach Wilson to play because when you start a season, you don't start as a finished product. You are getting better and evolving as the season goes on. This is now game 4 for everyone else, but this is game 1 for Zach Wilson. So this is like you're getting a week 1 quarterback instead of a week 4 quarterback. Remember this, Steeler fans, if there might just so eventually happen to be a change at the quarterback position in Pittsburgh, that's one thing you have to look at, is that quarterback coming in is like it's their week 1, which means it might take a little bit more time to get acclimated to everything. And for that reason, especially against a Pittsburgh Steelers team that does not start fast, I'm hoping that he doesn't start fast, and then that would be a better advantage for the Steelers.
Yeah, I didn't want to see Flacco in this game. Joe Flacco has done damage against Pittsburgh, and he's done it in Pittsburgh. It would not be too big for him, I guess, if you want to use a Mike Tomlinism there. But I was pulling for Wilson. The one thing, though, that Wilson provides that might benefit him based on the other news surrounding the Jets, which is their offensive tackle situation, where I think they're on tackle 3 and 4 as their starters on both left and right, is Wilson's mobility. Assuming that his knee is healthy, he is more mobile than Joe Flacco in terms of if things break down. If someone like Alex Highsmith, Malik Reed, they get the edge around the tackles, maybe he can use his legs to extend the play. But ultimately, I didn't want to see Flacco either. People kept on saying, give me Joe. Let's see Flacco one more time. Like, I've seen that guy enough. I don't know if I want to see him again. But Bryan, is there any part of the Jets, that offense or defense, that doesn't, not I'm going to say scare you, but at least get your attention? We'll put it that way.
Absolutely. That running game, you've got, even though the offensive line is not doing well, you've got some horses. You've got a guy that was expected to be a very good rookie coming out of North Carolina. He was the second North Carolina player, Michael Carter. Javonte Williams was the first one, but Carter is a second-year man. He can do a lot of things back there. And they had Breece Hall from Iowa State, who led college football last year, who's very good as well. So you've got young talent there, and you've got Wilson throwing to Garrett Wilson. I don't know how healthy he is with those ribs. I know he went out of last week's game against the Bengals. I have not seen their injury report. You might be able to help me with that, but he is probably one of the most electric rookies right now.
Okay, Dave, what about you? Is there anything about the Jets that gets your attention? And I know you just did your Stat Geek podcast on Thursday morning. Check that out on our audio-only platform. Was there any even statistical things that you noticed that you're like, wow, like that's something?
Well, yeah, I guess. Well, it's tough because the Jets, they're a top 10 offense right now. No joke. When you look at yardage, they're a top 10 offense, but they're actually behind the Steelers in rushing offense. So they're only averaging 84 yards a game on the ground, but they haven't played the Steelers yet. So that's why the Steelers need to step up and do something there. So that was pretty surprising, but I don't know that you can really go on that, because if you're going to have a different quarterback, who's to say it's going to be clicking the same way? And much like some other teams, when they have a younger quarterback, once you go to the young guy, you can't turn back. Do you really see them? You're going to hear me say a bunch of stuff like this today. Do you really see them? If Zach Wilson's not really getting it done by halftime, going back to Flacco, I don't see that they could do that in this game. So if he's really struggling, it could be that, he's got to take the lumps, and the Steelers could benefit from that. So the numbers that stood out for me the most was the fact that they are a top 10 offense in terms of yardage, because they're the number 5 passing offense in the NFL through 3 weeks. Now let's see if that's going to be the same with the new quarterback. But even with that, they score less points in a game than the Steelers do.
Some people say stats don't matter, but that's not me. I think that stats do have their place in the game. But let's talk about the injuries, because Bryan brought that up, and there are some big names on the Steelers coming into week 4 that, when you hear Minkah Fitzpatrick's name being listed by Mike Tomlin on Tuesday, it gets your attention. So Thursday, we wrapped up. We know that Friday is the final injury report with game status. Dave, why don't you go ahead and read us down that laundry list?
All right. So for the Steelers, there are 5 players on the injured report. There were 4 yesterday. A player that was added today was Larry Ogunjobi. That's how you say it, Jeff. But that's not injury related. Resting the player. My goodness, some people were upset. Why are they resting? They had a mini bye. If someone's maybe just a little tight or something like that, that maybe did to give them that rest. But that's not a concern. But of the 4 other players, they were all listed in the press conference on Tuesday. It was Presley Harvin with the hip. And they even specifically, this is weird. Did you notice this in the injury report? They don't just have hip. They have left hip. They don't usually say which side.
Non-kicking hip.
Yeah. So left hip. But he practiced fully both days. You've got Kevin Dotson with an ankle. Is it the same ankle that he's had problems with, or is it something different? We don't know. But he's been a full participant the last 2 days, so does it really matter? Minkah Fitzpatrick trying to get through the concussion protocol. Full participant for 2 straight days. It's very uncommon for someone to practice fully for 2 days and not come out of the protocol in time for the next game. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's very unlikely. Yeah. People might, and if anyone that knows about protocols is saying, how in the world is he practicing fully? Remember, they had all that time. I believe Tomlin said that he reported it the day after his symptoms. Once the symptoms subside, they were probably trying to get him through the protocol so he could play this week. Yeah. But no, you're right. If they get 2 days of full practice, and it's unlikely, not impossible, unlikely.
Yes. And the last person, because I don't want to leave it off, the player that has not practiced at all this week is Ahkello Witherspoon, who left the game with that hamstring injury. They're not saying much. I don't look for him to practice, and I look for him to maybe be ruled out. And if that's the case, you might even want to look to see. There'd be no reason to move him if he's going to miss 4 games to IR until Saturday. But for all you know, he could come back and practice tomorrow and end up still a possibility for Sunday. But so that could go either extreme. There's often a lot of questions whenever you get that DNP 2 days in a row. So we'll have to see what's going on with Witherspoon. I wouldn't bank on him.
Let's do a little prediction here for both of you all. If you had to predict any game status for the players that Dave just mentioned, who would be on the game status and what would the status be? The Steelers have not had a game status yet this season. Bryan, is there any player you think is going to be out? Do you think anyone's going to be questionable or doubtful?
I think Witherspoon's going to be out.
Is that it? Do you think that's the only one?
Yeah, I really think, and I think way deep down in my brain, that if he's a full participant, then you're going to see Percy Harvin and
Presley.
Gosh, why I haven't done that in
3 times in a show and never caught it.
I haven't done that in a year.
Percy Harvin.
So you have if Elvis has been there, then he's not leaving the building. I mean, Jordan Berry. I mean,
first it's the bad nickname, and then it's the bad one.
Don't bring up Weasel Boy, all right? No. I didn't bring that guy up for a reason, all right? Yeah. Don't talk about Weasel Boy. So you said the name. Why are you bringing him up?
I tell you what, as podcast producer, I'm booking him for Monday Let's Ride.
If we're calling rank, I'm going to say no.
So the question is, will he be a winner or loser?
He would be the only loser, I would just say.
He could punt in 80.
The Steelers were smart to make sure they had someone on the practice squad for the week, knowing there was even the possibility, because it doesn't hurt.
I wish it was another punter, but yeah, he has the negatives. Daniel McCullers gave him the negatives. That's what we have to. There's probably a whole group of people that listen to our podcast if they're younger that don't know what negatives are. They might be thinking we're talking about mathematical terms. We're talking about how they used to make pictures. All right, Dave, do you agree with Bryan that the only person with the status is an out for Ahkello Witherspoon?
Yeah, I'm looking for an Ahkello Witherspoon to be out. The only way it's going to be anything other than out is if he practices in some manner, and that really would surprise me because since they haven't played since Thursday, I would have thought if he would have played at all, he might have been limited today. The fact that he wasn't at this point, it's just you got to move on. I think he'll be out. I will also say this. If there is a status with Minkah Fitzpatrick, that's not good. Meaning if he's a full participant, but they still have to throw a status on him, that means he hasn't officially cleared the protocol. So if he's cleared the protocol, no status. If he's not cleared the protocol, they've got to throw the questionable on there. That's my understanding of it. Even if they believe that he could clear it, and that could even then change on Saturday. But I'm just going to feel so much better tomorrow afternoon when that comes up and there's nothing under Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Right. Yeah. So our boy Philip gave us another $4.99. Thank you very much for the tip. He said, speaking of injury, TJ Watt may be working out more, but let's pump the brakes now. He isn't tackling, falling, or wearing pads yet. Jeff, thoughts as a PT personal trainer. Okay, so first off, I'm not a doctor. All right. So the one thing you have
to play one on a podcast.
That's true. I do. I did.
Well, then I have a whole bunch of questions for you after the show.
No,
a urologist.
Growth
all right?
is not normal.
It should not look
only
that way.
supposed to
It
be
should
two.
not look that way. All right. I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Okay. With TJ Watt's injury, people need to remember this. We don't know what the injury was. We know it was a pectoral injury. Was it a complete tear? No, it wasn't. It didn't require surgery. Which muscle was it? Was it the tendon? All this stuff matters. And so everyone wants to say, well, TJ Watt's not going to be back until this week. But how can we, any of us say that? We don't know what the injury was. It's just like with Ben Roethlisberger when they would refuse to call it a Tommy John injury after he injured his elbow in 2019. Come to find out, it was a Tommy John injury, which required that surgery that redoes all the tendons down in the elbow. So I want to make, everyone needs to know that TJ Watt we don't know what the injury is. Second, he's a freak of nature. And the reason I say that is that people that are built that way, they can typically heal faster. No, I'm not suggesting he's on steroids, which that is a benefit of anabolic steroids. Just ask Terry Bradshaw and all those 70 Steelers that took him for that reason. But I want to make sure it's very understood that I don't think anyone's rushing him back, meaning the organization. If he's cleared medically, he can do all the tests. He can not only lift and bench, but he can also protect himself on the field. Then that's not rushing him back. I don't think that if it were 4 weeks, that was after week 1, right? So he could come back week 6, technically, right, Dave? If I'm
yes, he could begin practicing. For that, because you got to remember you got the 21-day window that you can come back and start practicing without going back on the roster. So that could technically be following week 5. Yeah.
So, I mean, if he returns to practice, everyone's going to freak out. I'm like, hey, maybe the injury wasn't as bad as we all thought. And when I saw him in week 2 without a sling on his arm, that was noticeable to me. I mean, if they're not trying to mobilize the shoulder in that joint, that means that, okay, that something's working. And then they show him working out before the game in week 3 in Cleveland on the field. I mean, he's just going through the motions. I'm like, geez, this guy's further along than we think. So don't worry. TJ Watt might be back before you think. So, all right. There's the injury report.
You want the Bengals? The Bengals.
Yeah,
it's not the Bengals. I just turned and saw the Bengals commit a pass interference. What team
Go ahead and do the Jets.
Names, gray faces.
The Jets, the New York Jets.
Like I said, this week it really is about the Steelers. Here we go. Thursday, they had linebacker Quincy Williams, ankle, did not practice. He didn't practice the day before either. It's not looking like he's going to play. They had quarterback Brandon Echols with the hamstring was limited. Then their 2 other players on there were both full participants, and defensive lineman John Franklin Myers with a toe and Zach Wilson with a knee, both full participants.
There you go. All right. So, let's see here. Let's talk about this game. And I want to ask you all a general question. Dave has alluded to this, I think, on the Scobro show. I talk about it on my Friday Let's Ride. And it's something that Mike Tomlin has talked about before. Style points. Style points. And how I always say style points don't matter. What matters is you win the football game. There's been a section of the fan base, both on Behind the Steel Curtains comment section as well as on social media, that believe that just winning this game is not going to be enough to convince them that the Steelers might have gotten around that bend. They want it to be in convincing fashion. Bryan, what are your thoughts heading into this game in terms of we all want the Steelers to win, obviously, but is how they win, does that matter?
Absolutely not. Let's go back 2 years to my ugly girl at the prom phenomenon and Mr. 2 a.m. You just win, baby. You don't care what she looks like. You just go dance and have a good time, and you call it a win.
Dave, what about you? Because I believe you had said that you'd like it to be in convincing fashion. I want to say it was on the Scobro show.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I said convincing fashion or not. Maybe I did. I don't know. I did tell you this. I want them to play well. I don't want them to win just because they're the better of two teams not playing very well. I want them to play well. I want them to play well and win. If playing well and winning means that they still just squeak one out because the Jets were playing really well, that's completely different than not playing well and still winning by double digits. I want them to play well and win. It's more than just the victory. I really want to see them come together, put together two halves of football, actually possess the ball and things like that. So it would be great if it was in convincing fashion, but to me, more importantly, it's playing well. Then how much that is in convincing fashion depends on how well your opponent's playing.
Yeah, the opponent definitely ties into that. And I think that to me, it's just like what Bryan said. You just win the game. Just win the game. If you blow them out, that's fantastic. If it's in convincing fashion, if it's a dominant performance, however you want to label it, that's great. That's awesome. But ultimately, just win the football game. And so we're going to talk about our predictions here in a second. Before we do that, let's talk about the over-under. Y'all ready?
Ooh, okay.
Yes.
Bryan, are you ready? Do you have your little notepad and you're ready to write it down?
And before we get started, we need to do the standings so everybody knows
man,
and understands. Jeff is currently leading 12. Dave has 11. I have 9.
But what about last week?
Last week you dominated. Well, you didn't dominate. You won 5-4-3.
Yeah. Well, I had it sitting here ready to go.
What?
I had my little toy trumpet so I could toot my own horn that I actually did all right. But apparently my son decided to steal it early. That's what happens when you steal your kids' toys. They steal them back.
It's all fun and games till the toy trumpet goes missing.
Yeah, I was going to say I was going to do my little Timmy trumpet impersonation. Sorry.
All right, let's start off with over under Pittsburgh Steelers team rushing yards. Team rushing yards. I'm going to set the line at 92.5 total rushing yards. Bryan, what do you have?
Man, I got burned by this by like 6 last week. 6 yards. So I'm going to go over. I like what I'm seeing. It looks like there is some improvement. That Jets defense is not, they're not gangbusters. It's not the New York sack exchange from before where you had a lot of guys on the defensive line that were great both ways. So let's just go say over.
All right, Dave, what about you?
What was the number again?
92.5. That's total team rushing yards.
I'm going over. The Jets are averaging giving up over 105. So that's a nice matchup for the Steelers. I think this is a time I want the game to play out in a way that the Steelers will have the opportunity to rush the ball.
I have this at over as well, just north of 100. I feel like the Steelers this year are responding to criticism, meaning, I expect them to start throwing over the middle more, these little passes and stuff that people are like, where is that? I think Mitch Trubisky design runs could be a part of that, but I think they go over 100. Now, on the flip side of things, the New York Jets, their rushing yards. Now, they do not rush the ball at any crazy clip. Their rushing yards, though, against the Steelers' rush defense, I have that over underline set at 97.5. 97.5. Bryan, what do you think?
I'm going over for what I said about Breece Hall and Michael Carter. I think they're pretty good.
Dave, what do you think?
The Jets, I think their rushing attack is basically suffering from the same thing that the Steelers is, and that is the game is not falling in a way for them to use it even more. Even the game they won, they had to score 2 touchdowns in the final minute 30 something in order to win that. So they were just constantly having to push the ball. So I think that's part of the reason why their numbers are lower. But you said it was
97.5.
I'm going to say barely under. I think it's going to be in the 90s, but not above that.
I'm going to go over. I just don't think it's going to be by much. They barely squeak over 100 yards total, but I have the over on this one. Okay, let's go with George Pickens receiving yards. I was talking to a guy in the gym this morning. I said, he's going to go off one of these days. You just don't know when it is. And we were talking about FanDuel because he's really cheap, and you're just trying to find that one game where he's going to make a big play. I have his receiving yards at 56.5. And so taking a look at things, his involvement in the offense, Bryan, you had the over or the under?
I'm definitely going over on this one. I've been doing the same thing as your buddy in the gym, not working out, of course. But what I've been doing was I've been saying every single week that this guy is going to go off. I really think this is a good place for him to do it.
All right, Dave, what about you? 56.5.
Ooh, I'm going to go under. It's not that I don't want him to. Who's going to go off? Is it going to be Pickens? Is it going to be Claypool? Is it going to be? I mean, has anyone really gone off yet? Yeah, that if someone does, you're still taking a 1 out of 3 shot that it's going to be him. So I'm just playing the odds.
All right, wishful thinking. I'm going to go over. Not by much. I'm going to have him around 65 or so. A couple big catches will get the job done. But I think George Pickens is at least trending in the right direction. Now let's go next over under Pat Freiermuth targets. So not receptions or yards or touchdowns, targets. He was not targeted until the very final drive in Cleveland, I believe. I think it was that game. Or was that against New England? He was
he had the ball thrown well over his head on the next to last drive. That was his first target, and it was against Cleveland. And then he was targeted in the final drive where he had his 2 catches.
Yeah. So I have it set at 8.5. I feel like this is one of those knee jerk. They're going to target him a bunch because he wasn't targeted last game. So 8.5 targets for Pat Freiermuth. Bryan, over under.
I think he should get over. I really think he should, but I'm just going to say under, but slightly. I think he's going to get a lot more, but I'm thinking more around 6.
Okay, Dave?
I'm going to go over because I don't know that, Coach Tomlin talked about the interior of the Jets defense, the interior of the Jets defense, the interior of the Jets defense. What were they worried about last week? They were worried about the guys on the outside. They were worried about Myles Garrett. They were keeping having a tight end chip and everything more. If you're more worried about the interior, use your tight ends out there. So I'm hoping that therefore it goes. It's me wishful thinking, but I'm going to say over.
I'm with Dave. I think it's a 9, but he went into way more detail than I was thinking. I just thought over with 9. Okay, before we get to this, we'll get Philip gave us our $1.99. He said the over-under on the number of times Jeff curses at Mr. Jordan Berry. Well, hopefully it's an under of it's 0 because he doesn't play. He shouldn't play. If he plays, then I'll set the over-under at 4, and I still will take the over.
I would take the over on that if he plays.
All right, let's go to 2 more. Over-under Pittsburgh Steelers sacks, 3.5. Bryan, over-under.
I'm actually going to go under, and I'm going to tell you why. Because every time the Steelers play in the last couple of years, every time they seem to play a beat-up line, they don't do as well. It's almost they're expected to do it, and they don't. So I got to go with the under here.
All right, Dave?
You said 3.5?
Yeah.
Let's get them back on track, even without Trent Jordan. Let's go over. I was thinking 3 or 4, so you split it right in the middle, and let's have a little more fun with the game. So I'll say over.
The Jets average 3 sacks surrendered a game, so I'm sticking with that number. I'm taking the under with 3. And then the last one.
It's not going to be the same quarterback. You're going to have a more mobile quarterback, but you might also have a quarterback that doesn't have the savvy veteran skills there. I finally got it out right.
Got it.
To dissect things and may hold the ball a little bit longer.
Good. I could see it either way.
Yeah.
Let's do total first half points. This is for both teams. So points in the first half scored. I have it at 24.5. So we're talking first half points. Over under, Bryan.
Under.
Okay, Dave.
Under. That's a big number.
I don't know. The Steelers scored what? 14? They had 14
I mean,
last
24 and a half, it could be 14-10, and that's still under. So yeah, I'm taking the under.
I'll take the under, but not by much. I think there's going to be more scoring in this game than people think. So, okay, there's the over-under for this week. Let's talk about the spread. What is the current spread? Is it still 3, Dave, or is it moved to 3.5?
Oh, I had the window up, and then I brought up the injury report on it. So I've got to get back. It's bounced a little bit, has it, between the 3 and the 3.5?
Last I saw was 3.
Yeah. So right now it is back at 3 with the over-under at 41.5.
All right. Bryan, how do you see this game shaking out?
I'm going to give the Steelers a win here. And I'm going to go ahead and say that they win this game 27-26.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. So you would have them winning on the money line, but losing with the spread.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I had to think about it.
Yeah.
Dave,
So Jets cover is what
Jets
in other
cover,
words
correct.
what Jeff is saying.
all right. What is your prediction, Dave?
Okay, my pain. No.
Yeah.
My prediction is the Steelers either need to get going right now, or they're really going to struggle all year. So with this being, like I said, I don't like to call must-win games until it's a game that absolutely, if they lose, they're eliminated. But this is they really need to win this game. So for that reason, I'm going to go with the Steelers, and I'm going with them scoring, not going crazy, but scoring more points than they have. Very similar, exactly what Bryan had in the Steelers scoring 27 points. But I also have the defense getting the job done, because remember, Mr. Wilson has never had to throw balls with Mr. Fitzpatrick out there, and their coaches aren't as familiar with Mr. Fitzpatrick, and either he needs to make sure they're constantly avoiding him, or can Minka sucker him into anything. So therefore, I think the defense is going to hold him down a little bit more. So I have 27-13. I
have the same score. I think I've predicted this score 3 out of. I'm just going to keep picking it until it comes close. 23-17 Steelers. I picked it last week. I think I picked it New England. There's something about that score. I feel like 23-17. I could see the Steelers coming out and getting up early. And then the Jets, it just seems like what the Jets do, especially in Pittsburgh. Then they just slowly come back and they make it a game. And then our hearts are racing at the end, and the Steelers hold on to win by a score.
So in other words, much like the Broncos game last year.
Yes.
Almost around the same time of the season.
Very good.
When the Steelers came back home after a loss, that loss was in Green Bay. It was 1 week later, but the Steelers, looked a little bit like a different team, was doing quite well. And then a game that they had in hand, they let it come back, and it took an interception at the end in order to seal it.
By Jimmy Pierre. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah.
Jimmy P.
All right. I want to ask you all a question before we go to trivia or anything like that. I want to ask you all a question. I want you to think to yourself, barring injury, give me a Mitch Trubisky stat line that would have Kenny Pickett entering the game in week 4, or if not in week 4, has Mike Tomlin turning the page in week 5 to Kenny Pickett. I don't care about, Jeff, he would never do that going into Buffalo or all that stuff. What would the stat line have to be for it to be so bad that Mike Tomlin says, we got to make a change? Bryan, what do you have?
I'm thinking it would have, and he hasn't done this really, but it would have to be like 16 for 36 and 2 or 3 picks. He's been over 20.
No, I
Yeah,
know. I'm just thinking
but
16 to 36. That's atrocious.
yeah, I mean, I really think, yeah, I really the stat has to be I think it's more of a bad loss and an inept offense more than his actual stat line.
Okay.
I think it's
So what would the play look like then?
the play.
So in other words, if it's not so much the stat line, it's the way it looks. What does it look like that it's so bad that everyone, and even including Mike Tomlin, would say we've got to do something?
Well, it's balls behind, guys. It's just not penetrating the into Jets territory. It's just a lot of things, and it's got to continue. You've got to continue to look at the fact that it's that late game. Last week they left the momentum. They had momentum. They left it in the locker room. That was a winnable game. Again, they had 2 winnable games. They won the game they should have lost. And they had 2 winnable games. So what I'm saying is if you have that fourth quarter with no drives again, with like a string of 3 and outs, that's what the play is.
Okay. I hesitate asking Dave this question, but I'm going to anyways. Dave, what do you think about what would the play look like in terms of Mitch Trubisky that would be so bad?
All right. Before I do that, I do want to say, for those thoughts and prayers out, the backboard is on the field for Tua.
Oh,
He is down, shot to the back, slammed back into the ground, and his hands kind of like curled up on him. After that, it's kind of scary right now. They just cut the commercial, but you don't want to see that from anybody out on that field. So for Tua and the whole Dolphins, thoughts and prayers out to you all. Back to the question. To me, that stat is simple. I'm going 3 picks and a fumble.
Oh, turning a fumble.
And it could even be 2, and that's a fumble loss, or 2 picks and a fumble. Assuming none of them are if one of them's in garbage time, it would take probably 4 turnovers or 3 key turnovers at times. Otherwise, it's kind of like the garbage time turnover last game. That do you really count that? Poor Najee Harris now has a fumble on his stat line because of what they were trying to do in that last game. That's a whole different story. But if the Steelers can never really get in it or get things going because of turnovers, and I don't think that's going to happen, because I also feel that part of the problem that the offense isn't more productive. They're not taking chances because they're trying not to turn the ball over, because if they turn the ball over, that's the biggest thing that would get him that would get your quarterback benched. So it's kind of a catch-22 there.
In my prediction, I honestly think that they come out looking great in the first half, similar to what they did in week 3. And in the second half, it falls apart again. The Jets come back, they don't win, but it's just enough that the fan base continues to be borderline relentless with thinking about changing the quarterback. Yet Tomlin won't do it based on the fact that they played well enough in the first half that they're not going to go and make that change. So I think it would have to be kind of what Bryan talked about. 16 of 36, a bunch of turnovers, looking inept in every way. I'm not predicting that to happen at all. But at the same time, I think that, here we are. This is where we are in the season, where a lot of people are talking about this. So we'll see. All right. Do you all both have trivia tonight? I know Dave does, but Bryan?
I do.
All right. Let's fire away. Go ahead.
All right. So in 1975, the Jets had a head coach that did not last the whole season. He is actually a legend in the game of football, but he went 1-12 that year, and they did not play in the final game. And because he didn't play because he was fired with 1 game to go. So who was that legendary head coach that sucked with the Jets? And this was before he became a legend.
You said in 75?
1975, yes. Let me double check that, but let me tell you this. He is a legendary college coach.
I'm probably not going to know that.
Yeah, I'm not a good college guy.
Yeah, but you know this one. This guy is an absolute legend. Went on to some broadcasting. He fought. He was Irish.
Lou Holtz?
Lou Holtz. And excuse me, I got his record wrong. He was 3-10 in 1976.
Wow, Lou Holtz coached the Jets.
I had no idea.
I
mean, you just dropped enough hints that made me
yeah, Lou Holtz was the coach of the Jets in 76.
Yeah.
From West Virginia.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Yep, Lou Holtz. So is Nick Saban.
You know who? Oh, don't get me started on Nick Saban. He screwed me over the rental car when I was a manager. I hate that guy.
Okay. All right. Good stuff.
Well, what's
Hey,
good for us right now is we can't look for the answers in the live chat because for some reason on StreamYard, our live chat is completely frozen. I am checking on YouTube in case anyone throws in a super chat. I'll make sure we don't miss it. So if people are wondering if we're not responding, that's nothing that we have control over. Mine is I have to grab it real quick. Mine's a very quick, short question. All right. And that is this. This is, I say this isn't a must-win game for the Steelers because they technically wouldn't be eliminated, but it's very close because what is the ultimate goal every season?
To win the division.
That's all you want to do?
That's the first goal.
No, what's the ultimate goal?
Oh, it's Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's to win the Super Bowl. When's the last time a team started the season 1-3 and won the Super Bowl?
Well, I can tell you. Actually, no, they didn't win that year. The Dallas Cowboys, did they do that in 93?
I do not know if they did that in 93 because it happened more recently than that.
Okay.
I only went back until I found it, that I didn't keep because it took long enough to get there. I didn't keep going back. So I will tell you, there's a few teams in there that were 2-2 that went on to win the Super Bowl, but you had to go back. There was a lot of, and believe it or not, most of them are 3-1. Very few 4-0 teams. Well, I'd have to keep going for a long time to see if anyone's 0-4, but I did find a team that was 1-3.
Could you give me a hint, please?
It was before any of us were at BTSC.
Wow. So
and it very well might have been not very well. Let's just say this. If I would have been a teacher in Wheeling, West Virginia, I might have had one Jefferson Hartman in class.
Oh, gosh, all right, I'm Kramer. I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I'll also tell you this: you could
if you would have been a teacher. So I graduated in 01.
Yeah.
It's the Patriots.
I was going to say, if you really want to think about it, your safest bet is the Patriots because they've won so many Super Bowls since then. But it was actually, so technically I wasn't thinking about when the game would have taken place. The year of the season kind of messed me up, but it was the 2001 Patriots. They started the season 1-3 and still went on to win the Super Bowl. So, but they weren't. I think two other times of two of their Super Bowl wins were where they started 2-2. They are not a team that always started off crazy out of the gates, but that's really tough to go 1-3 and then still turn around and make it the whole way there, regardless of how your schedule looks going forward.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, let's do some final thoughts here to wrap up the show. Bryan, go ahead. You're first.
All right. So the other day on my show, Bad Language, I had a headline saying that Mike Tomlin's stubbornness might just pay off. Or will it pay off is exactly the way that I had it. And the reason I had that headline is because a lot of fans are looking for Mike Tomlin just to have a quick hook. Mike Tomlin, to me, as a head coach, seems to be one of those guys that is very patient. And I'm starting to think that, of course, that's the same thing with the Rooneys, because how many times were we asking, not me, but how many times were fans asking for the head of, let's say, Bill Cowher, for Mike Tomlin, even Chuck Noll, when he started off 1-13 in 1969. So patience is kind of a virtue. And the reason I brought up the whole stubbornness thing, because the fact that he does not wilt in past years. There have been seasons where he has been 2-6 at the half. There have been seasons that he was 0-4 and did not have a losing season with those. And that 0-4 team in 2013 was a doink off of the crossbar from Ryan Suckup in his rookie year for the Kansas City Chiefs when they rested everybody. And that team almost made the playoffs. And I kind of, in my heart, I think they would have made a great run because they were really peaking after starting 0-4. They were a really good team. So stubbornness isn't always a bad thing. So my thing to you is when you read a headline, go ahead and listen to the show too. Because that question is a question that's on some people's mind, but not on everybody's mind.
All right, Dave, final thoughts.
It's a long season and a lot of things can change. There's things that are happening now with the Steelers team that is so frustrating. And, I can't believe this. I can't believe that. Oh, the Steelers need to make wholesale changes with this, that, or the other thing. In 6 or 8 weeks, you might be looking back and like, gee, I don't even remember how it was then. Remember, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense was a top 10 rushing defense early in the season last year and ultimately finished last. It can go either way. So it's not like, oh, calm down, it's going to get better. We don't know if it's going to get better. It might get worse. We don't know as fans, but the things that we think are definites right now are most likely not going to be definites in 8 weeks from now. Hopefully they're not definites in a bad way, but more in a good way. So there's still a lot of football to be played. Some people are saying, oh, how can you go into next season if you know Mitch isn't the answer and you don't give Kenny Pickett a chance to at least show what he can do? You know what? There's still 14 games left. I don't think they have to have all 14 for that. And that's what the Steelers have decided. Now, we'll see as that number dwindles down and how things are playing out. We are down now because we've had to sit for a week now dealing with this loss. Remember, just to put some perspective on it, the Steelers have been underdogs in every game they've had this season, and they're 1-2. They're not underdogs this week. This is the one they need. They need this one. Go out there, play hard, and get the job done.
All right, my final thoughts are simple. I hope that the fan base is just sticking with the team. It's been frustrating. It's been difficult at times. We are not going to go anywhere. You know that. I mean, if you've followed Behind the Steel Curtain for any duration of time, we'll still give you the podcast. We'll still give you the articles, all the commentary, you name it. But we hope that you are emotionally still invested in the team, even though things might not be going as planned. So keep that in mind. We're excited. I'm excited. And another game coming up.
And we'll be back Sunday.
Yeah, on Sunday. I forgot to mention that. The three of us, will be back on the post-game show. So you'll check us out probably about 20 minutes after kickoff. We got to listen to the Mike Tomlin press conference, things like that.
That's still in the first quarter.
What?
Oh, you mean 20 minutes after the clock hits zero?
Yeah. Yes. Good one.
They knew what they meant. Corrector.
Yeah. But we'll be back for the post-game show, and then we'll be back next week as we preview that upcoming game against the Buffalo Bills. But in the meantime, make sure you're checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com for all your Pittsburgh Steelers needs. And Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
See you next week.